We've got an exciting night together. I'd like to start, if we could, by acknowledging our gracious hosts, Wilson Sonsini, who made this space available to us. So shall we? Also, Charles's wife, Ying, where is Ying? Right here, made all the arrangements and ordered the food. So Ying, thank you very much for that. I have a hunch that at least some of us here share my no doubt biased view that MIT is the coolest place in the world. Does anyone share my biased view on that? Okay. Well, tonight we get to experience what surely must be the second coolest place in the world, namely the Santa Fe Institute in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Our speakers tonight will tell us what SFI is all about and some of the exciting things that are going on there. And I won't steal any of their thunder, nor could I do it justice if I tried. But I would like to mention a few of the many connections between SFI and MIT. First of all, several faculty currently at MIT either did their postdoctoral work at SFI or serve on SFI's external faculty or science board. And they include Seth Lloyd in mechanical engineering, Jessica Transick in engineering systems, Nathan Eagle in the media lab, and Eric Klopfer in urban studies and planning. At the same time, several current SFI external faculty and science board members hold degrees from or did their postgraduate work at MIT, including Ray Jackendorf, who received his PhD in linguistics, Louis Betancourt, postdoc in theoretical physics, Elizabeth Bradley, who received all three of her degrees in electrical engineering and computer science, and Raisa D'Souza, who we'll hear from tonight, who received her PhD in physics. Also with us in the audience is SFI Omidyar Fellow Nathan Collins. Nathan is raising his hand way back there, who received his master's in physics from MIT and who works in behavioral political science at SFI. One of SFI's earliest and most significant supporters was John Reed, MIT class of '61, former CEO of Citigroup. In 1986, John was frustrated with Citicorp's economists' inability to predict market dynamics, and that led to a long and productive collaboration between Citicorp and SFI in understanding and modeling economic complexity. John Reed was just named chairman of the MIT Corporation this past June. I'll briefly introduce all three of our speakers and then turn the meeting over to Chris Wood. If you would, please hold your applause until I've introduced all three of them. First of all, Chris joined SFI as VP of Administration and Director of the SFI Business Network in 2005. He received his PhD from Yale in 1973, was a postdoc at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in Washington, D.C., and returned to Yale as faculty member with joint appointments in psychology, neurology, and neurosurgery. In 1989, he left Yale to lead the biophysics group at Los Alamos National Laboratory, a position he held, until joining SFI in 2005. Raisa D'Souza received her PhD in statistical physics from MIT in 1999. Now at the University of California, Davis, she is Associate Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering and Computer Science and is a member of the Complexity Science Center at Davis. She served on the SFI Steering Committee and is external faculty member since 2007. Her recent work on explosive percolation in networks was published in the March 13, 2009 issue of Science. Last but not least, Kenneth Arrow received his BS in Social Science from the City College of New York in 1940, his master's in mathematics in 1941 and PhD in economics in 51, both from Columbia. In 1949, he was appointed acting assistant professor of economics and statistics at Stanford, eventually becoming professor of economics, statistics, and operations research. In 1957, he was awarded the John Bates Clark Medal of the American Economic Association, its highest award for an economist under the age of 40. In 1968, he moved to Harvard as professor of economics and was elected president of the American Economics Association in 1972. His most significant works are his contributions to social choice theory, best known as Arrow's impossibility theorem, to general equilibrium analysis, and information economics. He received the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1972. Please welcome our guests from the Santa Fe Institute.
Aspect ratios of these are not quite communicating with each other, but I think you'll be able to see them nonetheless. John, thank you, and thank all of the MIT Club of Northern California for inviting us this evening. It's really a privilege to be here, and we're all quite honored to talk with you this evening. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction and overview of the Santa Fe Institute and our business network. So you'll have a little bit of context before I call on Ken for some short remarks and then reintroduce Raisa for a moderate technical talk this evening. Unlike most of you in the room, I did not invest my life with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. However, I came very close. In that my daughter has invested her life in an alum of your fine institution, and I consider that as big an investment as I might make. I had the entirely serendipitous pleasure of having breakfast with him here this morning in San Francisco. He's employed on the East Coast, but is coincidentally attending a conference, so it was great fun to tell him what I was up to, this evening. Here's some photos that will introduce both the people and the geography of the Santa Fe Institute. We are blessed by being located in beautiful northern New Mexico, just outside of Santa Fe. The photo in the upper left is a photo of the Institute in the winter with the snow behind, and in front. The Institute is made up of an older building, which is a territorial style northern New Mexico estate, formerly owned by Secretary of War and Ambassador to China Hurley. We were fortunate enough to obtain it through the largesse and good judgment of some of our trustees and other donors in the mid-90s, and added a set of new offices onto it, which you can see to the right of that picture. The picture at the right is the front door, territorial style, welcoming all who come. Other examples of the building are shown around the edges. The most important thing is what you see in the middle. And that's we like to think the Institute is, and we try to set the stage so that the Institute is essentially an idea pump. It's a place where people can get together, frequently people who don't know each other, who come from very different backgrounds, to generate new ideas in ways that are difficult to accomplish in conventional institutions. To give you an example of that, I show you a picture of someone you might recognize. This is an article, a research news article from the journal Science in 1989. The gentleman on the right is someone you'll recognize on the podium in a short while, and it's not Raisa. The gentleman on the left is Phil Anderson, Nobel Prize winner in physics from Princeton, and these two gentlemen and their respective fields, physics and economics respectively, gathered a small number of members of each discipline at the Institute in the late 1980s to ask the question, what might physicists and economists have to say to each other. I think you can read on the right-hand side that there was a small discussion. The last paragraph on the right-hand side reads, Richard Palmer, a physicist at Duke University, recalls the first meeting in September 1987. Quote, I used to think physicists were the most arrogant people in the world, he says. The economists were, if anything, more arrogant. And that's just the quotation that the author happened to write down and use for this article. It could have gone the other way, and that taught us the lesson that one of the things we have to do is ask ourselves, as well as our visitors, to park our arrogance at the door, and we try to do that all the time. What's interesting about this meeting, though, is it laid the groundwork for a strategy of bringing very disparate groups of people together interested in a common problem. And that's been an MO for the Institute ever since. We've had recent meetings in which historians and biologists and geologists got together to pose the question, can there be a science of history? Very interesting question. John Lewis Gaddis, eminent historian at Yale, was one of the co-organizers of that meeting. And the historian started out by saying, well, this is a beautiful place. Thank you for inviting us here. We'll have a great time talking over the next couple of days, but we really don't understand this bit about can there be a science of history. I mean, history is a one-off. It happens only once. And the data are terrible. You have to depend on what people say. People lie, cheat, and steal, and they don't write the truth all the time. And this went on for a while. And finally, a young paleontologist raises her hand in the back and said, well, excuse me, it sounds like you're describing my science. Paleontology is the study of ancient history of life. It happened only once. We can't rerun it. We can't do experiments on it. And you think your data are bad? Try the fossil record. So this was the beginning of a very interesting interaction that is still ongoing to this day. And there will be an interesting book published on the second of those meetings coming out very soon, edited by our chair of faculty, David Krakauer, among others. So this idea of strange bedfellows, not intended to be sexist, but it was written in 1987, is part of our MO to this very day, and you'll see other examples of it in just a moment. Let me give you a quick thumbnail of the demographics of the place, because it's a lot smaller than many people recognize. We have about a dozen resident faculty and a dozen postdoctoral fellows at any one time, an external faculty of just under 100, about 24 staff, 300 to 400 visitors per year, long and short-term visits, and between 20 and 30 workshops and working groups per year. In addition to basic research, which is our primary product, if you will, we have very active activities in education, in international collaborations, and in our corporate and business network, about which I'll tell you a bit more in a moment. Our yearly budget is about the size of a small academic department at most universities. Quite likely, there may be a department at MIT that has a $10 million a year budget, but I doubt it. It's a mix. Our budget is a mixture of about 1/3 federal and foundation grants, between 50 and 60% donations from individual donors and small family foundations, and 10 to 15% of from our corporate affiliates and our business network. I should say that we are a private, nonprofit, independent research institute. We are not an accredited educational institute. We don't grant degrees. And there are advantages and disadvantages to being